We are here by divine appointment, absolutely by divine appointment. So why don't we just take a few seconds to focus on the light before we do anything else? You know, the light of truth, which is universal and encompasses the entire cosmos, has also decided to nestle in our hearts, in the heart of every human being on this earth. And maybe sometimes in the form of a spark. Ooh, how are you? The form of a spark or the form of a little flame. And the brightness increases in proportion to the purity of the mind and of the heart of the individual. But mostly, and sometimes more importantly, by the acknowledgement of that light and by the attention, the conscious attention that we give it. It's like stirring the fire with a fire poke. So why don't we take just a few seconds to visualize that light in our hearts and see it expanding, expanding for its splendor to fill your entire being, inside the body, the skin, the pores, down to the tip of our fingers and our toes. All right. So let's speak about yoga is all encompassing and universal. But throughout the ages, it has been presented in by different systems and aspects and different techniques. But that doesn't mean that it's divided, as we know. It is the same in every aspect. Every single aspect of yoga encloses or includes the entire nature of yoga, the entire principle of yoga. It's just like the drop of an ocean. You can know the entire nature of the ocean by just studying one drop. And it's the same thing with our blood and so forth. But when we speak about one aspect of yoga, then it's the same thing. The entire principle of the yoga is enclosed in one aspect. So what happens is that when we speak about one aspect of yoga, it's very natural to sort of overlap and slide into another aspect, and that's natural because they will never contradict each other. They come from the same truth. And so they come from the same fountain, and they're just little nuances of the real of the basis of yoga. And tonight we are going to be reflecting on one of those aspects. We're going to be reflecting on Ahimsa, which is the first yama, the first limb of the Eightfold Path of Yoga, which was expounded by the great saint, ancient sage Patanjali. So, Ahimsa has been described as non-violence. Sri Gurudev tells us that Ahimsa has also been described as non-killing. But in reality, the meaning of Ahimsa is far wider and far deeper than that, because it means not causing pain. And pain can be caused by outward actions, or more importantly, it can be caused by our thoughts and our feelings. And the pain can be much worse than killing, because it may cause to result in deep-seated and enduring harm and hurt. So it's more dangerous and more harmful than just killing. And the pain that we are speaking about here, it can be caused, as I said, by our thoughts and our feelings more sometimes by an outward action. And so the pain that we are talking about here is not only the pain that a human being can inflict upon another, but we are talking about the pain that we can inflict on all things, every living thing. What is every living thing? Everything. Everything. The scientists have discovered that what it looks like a human eye, like a solid or inert object, is nothing else but an accumulation of atoms revolving with such velocity that they appear to be motionless and solid, just like this chair. So everything in life is alive, and everything in life has feelings. And that is what we are going to be meditating on tonight. Gurudev used to say to us, he taught us that we should try to make all life a yoga, an act of yoga. And he encouraged this point, and he stressed it very, very strongly, always. To the point that he would stress the point of how our actions would affect our mind, how we treat it. So, keeping in mind the truth that everything is alive, that everything, these atoms revolving, sharpens our awareness of the importance and the significance of all the life around us, and is conducive to our modifying our behavior and our attitude towards everything. Modifying our behavior to outward things, to external things, ultimately results in the purification of our mind. And the purification of our mind leads to equanimity of mind, leads to unconditional love, and that is ahimsa. Gurudev stressed this point so much about uh, taking care of our actions because they influence the mind, that he would encourage us, let's say it that way, to leave, to believe that when if we had left any space in which we occupied, to leave it cleaner and better than what we found it. What was the reason? Because he said, let the next person that comes in be blessed by a godly vibration. And this extended even to restrooms and restaurants. He encouraged us that when we go to the restroom in the restaurant, to use it and then leave it cleaner than what we found it, and in a better order than what we found it, so that the next person that comes in will not be offended in any way and would be blessed by a godly vibration. We were in a restaurant once in Connecticut with a long table, Om Gurudev, and a lot of our members of our Sangha were there. And he was just talking about that because we were in a restaurant. So one of our members said, well, what if I go into the restroom and I find the mess left by the other person? And I find it all messy, all dirty. And Gurudev said, so much more the reason why you should clean it up. And he said, and while you're doing it, think that you are cleaning some mess in your own mind. In this way, you will both be benefited. And the same thing extended to rooms in the hotels where we stayed. He would say, when you leave the room, even if it is only for the day, you have to be in perfect, lovely order. It has to be impeccable. So when the cleaning staff comes in, they get this beautiful vibration of God. Some godly people have been here, and that is the purpose. And even the bathrooms in the hotels, he would say, don't, when you finish the bathroom and your towels are soiled and wet, don't just make it into a bundle and put them somewhere. No, he said, even if they are soiled and wet, you fold them carefully and put them high. So when the cleaning person comes, he or she feels happy. Everything is easier. She doesn't have to bend, and she doesn't have to fold the towels or anything, and make it easier. And all this was never, never, never with the idea that we were gaining merit and approval from other human beings. No. All this was just to saturate every place and every human being and everything with the grace of divine love. That was the only reason. Because grace, the grace of divine love, doesn't have any capability of offending or receive any offense. And that is ahimsa. Ahimsa also is the miracle working power of solving situations, conflicts. So ahimsa is the miracle working power of bringing peace, the solution of conflicts in human beings. I will tell you of a personal experience that I had about this. At one time in my life, I was working for the United Nations Development Program, which is a program of the United Nations that is very beautiful because it seeks to eradicate poverty in the developing countries. Anyway, so my place where I was going to work, where I began to work, was the External Relation Division of the United Nations Development Program. And the division consisted of 15 people that were at each other's throat. 15 people that didn't like each other, that were politicking against each other, criticizing, uh, oh, uh, trying to get ahead. And I fell into this place, and I thought that I had fallen into a snake pit or something, because it was so disagreeable. Everybody would come to my office, pass through my office, completely in disharmony with everybody else, especially with the boss, the director. He was a French gentleman. We're going to call him Mr. D. Nobody liked Mr. D, and Mr. D didn't seem to like anybody. It was very unfair, and it was very, very disagreeable. And I didn't know how I was going to get along there. And that was exactly the time when I met Gurudev in New York City. So here I am, I meet this being, my Gurudev, and I am drinking all the vibrations of this wonderful divine being, and I'm marveling at how the serenity that pervaded everything that he did. It was like flowing water. It didn't matter where he was talking or eating or joking or teaching, whatever it was this serenity, this contentment. And I was just in awe about this. So one day I asked him, and I said, Gurudev, how do you, I had just met him, it was recent. How do you keep the serenity, this peace in the middle of all the things that you're doing, teaching, eating, walking, driving the car? How do you do that? Gurudev, I want to be like you. This is what I want. What do I have to do? And he said, the proverbial, the dedicated always enjoy true peace. Live only to serve with love, and always put the other person first. So I have this instruction, and the next day I'm sitting in my office in the snake pit, not knowing what to do, how to apply that. Live only to serve, put the other person first, and where do I go from here? I had a secretary, and her name was Betsy. She came from the Philippines. She was very lovely, very beautiful, but she lived in another stratosphere. Betsy arrived late every single day. She seemed to be dreaming. Did anybody ever see Gone with the Wind? Do you remember when Melanie is about to have the baby, and Pritzi, what was her name? The name of the little girl that was assisting them. Anyway, here is the great birth coming along, and she's singing along, and she's doing nothing. And so this is the way Betsy was. She would take the documents and drop them on the desk, and she was dreaming. So I would correct her, and after I corrected her, she would be good for 2 days and then back again. So when after Gurudev gave me this instruction, I go to my office, and the most immediate person is Betsy. How do I serve Betsy? Does that mean that I have to go and get coffee for her or a sandwich for lunch? Is that what I'm supposed to do? It didn't feel right. So then I don't know what to do. But we have to remember, I didn't know this at this time. I wasn't aware of it. But when the Guru gives an instruction or a suggestion, and we willingly try to do it, His grace is right there, constantly supporting and help, and the result is bound to be good because His grace is already working. I didn't know that at that time, but His grace was working. And so the idea came from the grace that the only way that I could do something was to start looking at Betsy, because Betsy's attitude was irritating me, and I was criticizing her constantly. In my mind, I had already fallen, and the environment is stronger than willpower, and I had already fallen in the same attitude as the others. So I would criticize this Betsy all the time, and I felt bad. I felt bad about it. So the grace gives me the idea the only thing I can do is to just look at Betsy as if I had never met her before, to look at her with a new mind, and let's see what I see. So I switched my internal mechanism, and I began looking at Betsy as if I had never seen her before. And I didn't say anything, I didn't do anything, but somehow, before I knew it, I was aware that her long conversation, she used to hang on the phone like a monkey, all the time, speaking on the phone. And before I knew it, I perceived, I knew, I don't know how, but the grace, uh, that she was having terrible dramas with her boyfriend, whose name was Roberto. And before I knew it, I don't know how things happened. Betsy was sitting across my desk, opening and spilling out all her drama with her boyfriend. I didn't say anything. I didn't give any counsel. I just listened, which is probably what I've been doing in Gurudev's service, just listening. And as soon as she was able to express, just like that, she started coming early to the office. She was very efficacious, and she changed. Oh, so this is a good thing to do. So I began doing the same thing with all 15 people. And I don't know, my beloved ones, I cannot tell you of any technique or anything. The only thing that I can say is that I changed something inside of myself, and changes were happening all around me, to the point that my boss, the boss that nobody liked, the rumor was that he was a climber and that he was very unscrupulous and was trying to climb the ladder to get on the top of his profession, and that he didn't care what he did to anybody. That was the rumor that I heard. And in reality, he didn't say good morning to anybody, nothing. But one day I'm in his office with some documents, and lo and behold, he invited me to have lunch. Oh, but the vibration that came out of him was not flirtatious at all. So I accepted, and we went out to lunch. And all the people are thinking, ooh, she's going out with the boss to lunch. Well, he took me to lunch. It was a very long lunch. And during the lunch, he, I don't know how these things happened, he began expressing the great stress that he was on. And it all boiled down that he had a very ambitious wife and a very pushy wife that wanted luxuries. And we had seen her coming into the office, a very handsome French woman, flaunting her mink coats and things, didn't say hello to anybody. So I began beholding this sad, very sad man. And from that moment on, don't ask me how, things began changing, and it ended up that Mr. D invited the whole 15 of us every week to have lunch. Every week we went out with him to have lunch, and either in the delegates' lounge or in some restaurant. So we had the opportunity to get to know each other. We didn't know that. We didn't know each other. And to begin to have fun. We began to have fun with each other. And with him, he had an incredible, beautiful French sense of humor, Mr. D. So that was witnessed by all the other people. And you know, the external relations people are having fun where they're having lunch every week. So the end of the year came, and at the end of the year, all the departments of the United Nations get together in the General Assembly Hall, and people are honored by what they did. Every department gives their report and things like that. So the end of the year come and everybody is, the General Assembly Hall, you've seen it in pictures. It's enormous. And all the departments are there. And Mr. Hoffman was the director of the whole UNDP. And so each department comes and gives the report, and they give prizes. They honor people for what they have done. And all of a sudden, Mr. Hoffman stands up. He's the director of the whole UNDP. And he says, and this year, we are going to give a prize that we have never given before. He says, for the first time, we are going to honor and give a prize to the department that during the year had the most cordial relations among co-workers. External Relations Division of the UNDP. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking that the world has gone crazy, that I am hallucinating, and I couldn't believe it. And then he says, so the prize goes to Mr. I want to say his name, to Mr. D. And Mr. D gets up. He was short and stocky, and he wobbled a little bit when he walked. And so he's walking down the aisle, and I'm looking at him, and I just could not believe this miracle. And my mind went, and I was thinking, this is really unbelievable. And the thing is, my mind said that none of these people know that one little person was able to change 15 people. And more important than that, nobody in the whole United Nations knows that Swami Satchidananda even exists in this world, the one through whose spirit all this happened. So this is the beautiful thing that we should know, that Ahimsa, just paying attention, just acknowledging the other human being as they are without any preconceived ideas, can produce peace and reconciliation and can have the solutions uh, to conflicts. So that's wonderful. And for a person thinking of Gurudev and how he lived and how he moved and how he loved everything, it looked as if he was worshiping all the time, worshiping the bag, worshiping the glass, the way he moved, worshiping the pen, the paper. It was uh, something that we could think is only a dream, but it was reality. And for a person like that, who is established in Ahimsa, the whole nature responds, and the whole of nature bathes that person with favor, with its favor, and the whole of nature honors that person. And I have an example of that with Gurudev. We were in France, and somebody had invited him to lead a retreat in the outskirts of Paris. And the retreat was going to be held in this enormous, monumental, beautiful old castle. The castle was made out of stones. And inside the castle, everything was beautiful. And of course, they had modernized it a little bit and everything. But the castle didn't have air conditioning or heating. It was summer. And we arrived one day at the early mid-afternoon, and the castle didn't have any air conditioning. So they showed us to Gurudev's quarters, and they had arranged sort of like a little suite for him, you know. We went in, and there was a little sitting room, and then there was Gurudev's bedroom. And so they showed us this, and we went there, and it was very hot. So I opened the windows for cross ventilation and arranged all his things for him to rest, and left the windows open, and I offered to him if he wanted to have some tea. And he said yes. So I left, and I left the door of his bedroom open, and I went out the other door, and I went down to all the labyrinthian ways of this castle to the kitchen, and took the tray and arranged for his tea, and went up again. And I went into the little sitting room and then get into Gurudev's door. Because it was open, I had left it open. I get to the door, and what do I see? I see Gurudev reclining on his bed with his hands like this, and above him a circle, a perfect circle of bats, either maybe 5 or 10 bats in a perfect circle around him. So I froze at the door, and I said, Om, Divine Mother Gurudev, what is going on here? And I can't get in there. I'm terrified of bats. And uh, and then he says, oh, it's okay, Amma. They just came to say hello. And I said, well, all that is very nice, Gurudev, but I cannot get into there. I'm terrified of bats. And he says, after a big pause, he's still looking. And then he addresses himself to the bats, and he says, okay, thank you for coming. You can leave now. And he goes with his hands like this. And what do I see? I see the circle of bats going out of the window in one straight file. And they never came back for the rest of the retreat. So in my mind, this is the way that I interpret that. This is my mind. This is the way that I interpret it. Bats are disliked by everybody, almost. They're chased away. They're ugly. The poor darlings are not agreeable to look at. And so these poor bats are not loved and generally by people. But I think that that day, the bats knew that love incarnate had come into their territory. And so they came to welcome and to pay their obeisance and honor this love that was not going to harm them, that was just going to love them. That's the way that I interpret that. So, and all these things are ahimsa. It's like ahimsa becomes a way of life. It's not only a practice that we do, but it's a way of life that blossoms out of a purified nature. And this is needed in this day to day because the world out there is the proverbial valley of tears, but mostly it has become like a cesspool of hate, ignorance, immorality, and amorality that needs so much help. And we are the ones, we are the body of light. You know, when Gurudev said that we should make our life an act of yoga, act of yoga, he reminded us also that as yogis, we are supposed to inspire and uplift the world around us by our example. And Gurudev, so knowing that this world really needs help and assistance, then we should reflect on who we are on this world. Who are we? We're not just, the politics today distract our minds, and we engage ourselves and waste so much time speaking about what we don't like, speaking about what is wrong, instead of using our minds to help and to speak the solution instead of the problem. And of course, when we look at the world around us and we see the politics today, all that that's the main thing that is happening now. What happens to us? Immediately we fall into criticism, condemnation, judgment. And Gurudev has taught us that criticism, condemnation, and judgments are the enemies of our souls. They poison the blood. He used to say it poisons the blood. So we, as the body of light, should be concentrating on the solution and not on the problems. And Gurudev says that we are the babysitters of the world, the babysitters, and that we were created to take care of everybody. Once we were having lunch in our home, and he brought some guests with him. And he talked about this, that we were the babies, we are the babysitters of the world. That's what I understood. So I said, oh, what a sobering thought, to think that we are the babysitters of the world. And he said, I didn't say that, Amma. I said that we were the babysitters of creation, of the galaxies, the planets, the whole thing. And I said to him, we, here in this little ball called Earth? And he said, yes, we here are the babysitters of the entire creation. Every action, every thought is influencing the entire creation. And unless this dins in you, you will never be able to serve the way you're supposed to serve. That is a tall order. It sounds like a tall order, but in reality, it's just coming in touch with who we are and acting on it. So ahimsa, even the word says it, ahimsa is the royal road of life, is the royal road of love, is the royal road of peace, is the royal road of fearlessness, is the royal road to life and to the enlightened living.